What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to week 2 of the NFL Weekly here on the First Off the Bench podcast network. Of course, breaking down everything NFL football has to offer from a betting angle. For the moment, I am going to be running solo. So we are possibly going to have Raider Jim joining us here momentarily. But for now, you are stuck with me. Obviously, if it's week 2, that means we had to have already had week 1. And before we do dive into the fun stuff, we do need to do a little bit of housekeeping here. And I'm not going to lie, I'm probably going to say we multiple times, even though it's just me at the moment. Just a habit of being the host. What can I say? But I'll do my best to not throw we in there. But I am recording here on September 11th, 2025, of course, Thursday, about an hour before the Packers and Commanders go at it on Thursday Night Football. Won't give you a preview for that one because pod won't be out by then, so there's no point. But obviously in the United States of America and maybe around the world, September 11th is synonymous with, of course, September 11th, 2001, the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, the flights that went down in, I believe it was Pennsylvania. Obviously, for people of a certain age, myself included, I remember vividly where I was, how that day, pretty much went. Considering it was 24 years ago, I don't think I have a memory of a day 24 years ago as poignant as September 11th, 2001 truly was. And obviously, things have happened over this past week in this country that have really been terrible. But what I always try to say when this day does come around is, as terrible as September 11th was, September 12th was in its own way a bit of a magical day. Obviously, it's still a ton of sorrow, but us as a country, it wasn't about right or left. It wasn't about Democrat or Republican. It wasn't about Christian or atheist or agnostic, whatever. It was about being an American. And tell you, in times like these, September 12th, 2001 is what we should all strive for as a country. So how we'll get things started. Obviously, look, there it is. I'm going to be talking about some things that in the real world, look, the NFL, as much as we love it, doesn't really matter, but it is an escape for a lot of people. Again, myself included, and probably yourself as well. So take this time, this hour, to disassociate from some of the negative things going on in this world. Unfortunately, they will still be waiting for you when this is all said and done, but did just want to kind of get out in front of that. Obviously, September 11th, a very, very tragic, but also healing day in this country to remember what we were like after. So with that being said, time to dive in to the pod, what you are all here for. It is week 2 of the NFL Weekly, and looking back at a week 1 that, I'll be honest, week 1 is very rarely good football, especially when we kind of have the preseason, maybe they play a series in the first preseason, but that's it. I remember when I was growing up, the third preseason game, you'd see those starters out there for at least a half, maybe even 3/4. Not so much anymore. So a lot of these early season games kind of act like a quasi preseason for a lot of teams when it comes to their starters. So we will take a look back at some of the good, the bad, and of course the ugly of week 1. with that being said, let's stay positive and let's start with the good things that we saw from week one. Obviously, when you're talking about good, you got to start with Josh Allen, and that's probably an understatement. You probably got to start with great. What a Sunday night game we saw. I just mentioned week one kind of being sloppy for a lot of teams. The Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills both looked like they were in mid-season form, at least the offenses. I'm sure the defensive coordinators had plenty to chew on this week, but as a fan of football and somebody that didn't really have a dog in the fight, I did have Buffalo money line, but at the end of the day, it was kind of just about sitting back and watching two of the best quarterbacks go at it, and two teams that I do believe are going to have something to say about the about the AFC when it is all said and done. Josh Allen, 240 yards, in the fourth quarter. Incredible. Erased a 15-point deficit twice, I believe, in that fourth quarter. Obviously, Derrick Henry fumble is going to be something that is talked about, and a lot has already been talked about the 4th and 3 for the late game decisions. I'm going to save that for the bad because I do have some thoughts there. But on the other side of the good, look, might just be me right now, but Raider Jim is here in spirit, and this pod is undefeated. Both the Raiders and the Eagles get wins opening night, or I should say opening week. Eagles got theirs opening night. Wasn't without drama. That'll be in the ugly side of things, so we'll get into that. But congrats to the Raiders going on the road, cross country. Pete Carroll getting his first win in the silver and black. Wanted to shout out the Raiders going across country, getting the win. And of course, the Eagles as well, but I think that was more expected than the Raiders, with all due respect to my friend and colleague, Raider Jim. I think he would even agree on that. And finally, speaking of good, and this is in the form of a question, is Daniel Jones good? Wow, what a performance. I'll put my hand up. I was very, very wrong about what we were going to see at Indianapolis. I didn't think we were going to see greatness out of the Dolphins by any stretch of the imagination, but I still felt like they were better than the Colts. And wow, was I wrong. The Dolphins, that is a tailspin that is hurtling towards dangerous territory. I don't know the odds on it, but I have to imagine Mike McDaniel has to be the odds-on favorite to be fired first in the NFL. It's a bad look right now in Miami. I think Mike McDaniel is a very smart offensive mind. Unfortunately, look, the players coach side of things, it looks good, but it's only good if you're winning. But back to Daniel Jones and the Colts. This is a team now, if Daniel Jones can play above average, I personally believe the Colts are going to be a playoff team, and I would not be surprised to see them win the AFC South. Obviously, not a whole lot of, juggernauts in that division. The Texans have been running it for the past couple years, but a lot of that's just because of, they've won by default, essentially. They finished above 500. It's pretty much all you have to do in the AFC South. After what we saw with the Texans on Sunday, again, it is week one. You don't want to overreact, but the Colts look like a team that is poised to take that division. Again, only after 60 minutes of football, long way to go. Moving on to the bad. And look, we're going to start in Detroit. Obviously, the Packers took the Lions to the woodshed, took care of business, kind of returned the normalcy in that region. Sorry, Lions fans, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, for the Lions, they came out and they looked flat. They looked unprepared, and there wasn't a whole lot of aggressiveness on the Lions side of things. So I think the question has to be, was the Lions' success maybe more about Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn rather than Dan Campbell? Again, just asking a question. We're not going to have a full answer after week one, but I do believe the Lions have to get things under control. They will be playing the Bears this weekend, I believe. Let me just make sure I have it. Yes, so they will be hosting the Bears. So maybe a get right game for them, but they will have to show up and be fully prepared in that one. Of course, obviously, maybe a bit of a revenge game I don't know if it's a revenge game for Ben Johnson. No one kicked him out of Detroit. He left willingly, but I'm sure he would love to go to Detroit and get his first win, go against Detroit and get his first win that way. So onto the other side of bad things. I alluded to it a little bit earlier and I had to kind of pull myself back. But it's the Ravens' late game decision making, and not just on Sunday, but throughout the years. I mean, there's plenty of graphics out there on social media that'll show you screenshots of, Ravens with 10, 14-point leads in the fourth quarter. And, the caption says the Ravens lost all of these games. It is difficult because I know a lot of people, obviously, the Derrick Henry fumble was the big kind of turning point, I would say, in that game. But a lot of talk has been made about Jim Harbaugh not going for it on 4th and 2 late in that game, up by 2. And while I understand that argument, I do think context does need to be applied because, look, if they do not get those 2 yards, and I get it, they got Derrick Henry and they got Lamar Jackson. So you have to feel confident about them getting those 2 yards. But if you do not get those 2 yards, the Bills are essentially almost in field goal territory. I think it was around like the 40-yard line. So that would line up for about a 57-yarder. So not exactly a chip shot, but these days, Matt Prater, he can get it done, and he did. I personally believe that the Ravens did make the right decision punting because, yeah, it's like, you know what? We haven't been able to stop Josh Allen. But you still gotta go out there and try to make it happen. Because again, if you don't pick up those 2 yards, they're getting ready to bring in the field goal unit pretty much right away. And they can win the game that way. And again, I get it. Oh, well, they ended up going down and getting it. Yes, hindsight is 2020. And we could always say, yeah, they should have gone for it, blah, blah, blah. But there is an alternate universe out there where we do not see this reaction because the Ravens go for it and then they don't get it. And then the reaction, unfortunately, is, oh, what is John Harbaugh doing? I can't believe he did this. So I think it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Josh Allen is just really, really good. And I think the Ravens defense understands that. And back to the drawing board for them. But the decision-making late in games, I do think does need to be addressed. No doubt about it. Now, finally, I got 3 uglies for you. Starting at home with me, with the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles did get the win. It was definitely a little tighter than anyone really expected, especially after the Micah Parsons trade and all that stuff. But the big thing that happened in this one was right after the kickoff. Jalen Carter spitting on Dak Prescott. Now, I know that, first of all, NBC having footage of Dak Prescott, spitting in his direction and sitting on that for 2.5 hours. It's kind of crazy to me. However, 2 things can be true at once. They should have shown that earlier than they did. But the other truth, no matter what Dak Prescott did, it didn't warrant getting spit on, or at least spitting in his direction does not mean you get to spit on that person. But I do think it added a little bit of context. Again, I do believe Jalen Carter should have been ejected. He was ejected, and it was a big loss for the Eagles. You saw it. The Cowboys went up and down on the Eagles defense, especially on the run game, and it really showed Jalen Carter how important he is to this team. I think it was a selfish, silly, stupid act. But look, Jalen Carter is still young, and I'm not going to, go down the road of, oh, well, what was he doing in college? Because the thing that probably made Jalen Carter drop all the way down to number 9 was a lot more serious than him spitting on somebody. So again, context matters. It was a stupid decision. He has been fined, I think, $57,000. And technically, he was suspended 1 game, but the NFL decided that him being out of week 1 was when he served it. So we will see Jalen Carter against the Chiefs on Sunday, assuming all bodily fluids stay in the body. But two more others, or uglies, I should say. I alluded to this earlier, but the Miami Dolphins, what is going on? This was a franchise that just 2 or 3 years ago looked like they were on the ascendancy, and they looked like possibly they were going to be taking over kind of the AFC. I vividly remember them dropping, what was it, 70 or something on the Broncos, where they're just running all up and down the field with such speed, precision. And even last year, when Tua dealt with his concussion stuff, you could say, you know what, look, they don't have their starter in. You got to give them a break. Well, they don't have any excuses now. And they had probably, actually, I'm not even going to say probably, they had the most pathetic performance of week 1. Excuse me. And I don't think it was particularly close either. So that is something that definitely needs to be addressed for the Dolphins. But I think the big question is can they get it addressed in season? Because again, I think Mike McDaniel is a player coach. Everything's great when you're winning, but the minute you start to lose, the kind of laissez-faire kind of persona that he wants to put out, I think it's starting to wear on people. So we'll see what's going on with the Dolphins going forward. And my final ugly of week 1, it was the last thing we saw from week 1. It was the second half performance from the Bears. What was that? Ben Johnson's first drive as a Bears coach, Caleb Williams, takes them down the field a bit, did a lot of it through his legs, which is fine, but he didn't make major strides in the passing game in that first drive. But at the same time, it is something that needs to be asked. Is Caleb Williams the answer in Chicago? And I don't know if we'll have the answer soon. But Ben Johnson has his work cut out for him. I don't know what the second half game plan was, but he was outcoached. The Bears were outplayed in every facet of the game in that second half, and you got to give JJ McCarthy his flowers. He was overwhelmed for 3 quarters. Myself and Raider Jim were exchanging text, and for 3 quarters it was, I think this kid might be a little bit, over his skis, or he's in the deep end, and I don't think he knows how to swim. Well, Kevin O'Connell was able to teach him very quickly if that was the case, because JJ McCarthy had an incredible fourth quarter, and he's already 1 for 1 when it comes to fourth quarter game-winning drives. JJ McCarthy getting the job done. Kevin O'Connell, for me, I still will say, maybe give Pete Carroll a little bit of the nod because of the experience, but I have no problem saying Kevin O'Connell, for me, is the number 2 coach behind Andy Reid in this league. He is a fantastic coach, and it seems like whatever comes his way, he has an answer for it. We'll see how JJ McCarthy and the Bears continue on through the season, I should say. But with that being said, time to dive into the game previews for the week. We were gonna start in the AFC West. Obviously, I was teeing this one up for Mr. Martinez, Raider Jim, but of course, doesn't look like he's going to be joining us today. So he's going to be stuck with me talking Raider football. This is the only time that anyone else will get first word over Raider Jim when it comes to the Raiders. But obviously, when it comes to the Chargers and Raiders, it's a game that will be played on Monday night. This will be the second of 2 games. We got a Monday night doubleheader. Tampa Bay and Houston, which I will talk about momentarily, will be our first game. Chargers Raiders will be game number 2. They will be staggered, so this game will be going off at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. But the line, as it sits now, of course, I am recording on Thursday, so lines may move by Sunday. Keep an eye open for that. The Chargers are 3-point favorites going on the road. The over-under is going to be 46.5. with the Chargers sitting at minus 180 on the money line, and the Raiders sit at plus 155. I made money with the Raiders last week, kind of went against my rule of not betting week one. Felt like I had a good idea. And at least in this game, or at least in the Raiders Patriot game, I had a pretty good idea. The Chargers side of things, I expected them to cover. I did not expect them to win outright against Kansas City, but I was very, very impressed with what the Chargers were able to do. They were in control for most of that game. There was a little hiccup towards the end. Omario Hampton, towards the end of the first half, running out of bounds. Big mistake, but I do want to give, you know what I was going to say? No, it is Harrison Butker. I want to give Harrison Butker and the Chiefs special teams a little bit of a shout out. That last second fire drill on the field goal to hit a 59-yarder. Wow, tip of the cap to that group. Wasn't enough, but again, for the Chargers, outside of that little 5-minute little in real time of, is this a Charger collapse incoming? They were able to grab a hold of the reins, keep things on track, get the win. Look, anytime I see a line of -3, I'm buying a half a point. It's just a question of which way am I going? And I'm going to buy a half a point here and give me the Raiders plus 3.5. I think this is a field goal game. I would not be terribly surprised to see the Raiders get the win. I think the Raiders defense looked very good, and the Raiders have wasted no time, I should say, in immediately getting Brock Bowers involved. He had a great game. Even Michael Mayer looked pretty darn good as well. And I'm interested to see how the Raiders continue to go with Geno and with Pete Carroll. Give me the Raiders plus 3.5. I like this to be a field goal game, and that means I'm a winner regardless. In terms of the over-under, I do like the under here. I think you got two offenses that maybe might not be opening up the playbook, and two defenses that I think are that were really good week one. Or maybe not really good, but they were good enough. Mainly the Raiders. The Raiders had some moments. Even the Chargers, maybe late in that game, Mahomes' magic almost came out. But overall, I think both of these fan bases have to be feeling good heading into this. Someone's going to feel amazing when this is all said and done. But give me the Raiders plus 3.5. You are going to have to buy a half a point more than likely on that one. And the under 46.5. Moving on to the other side of the AFC West. It is the Denver Broncos. They are going to be 1.5 point favorites as they head to Indianapolis. The over-under here sits at 42.5. In terms of the money line, Denver minus 125. Indy is plus 105. And I think these are two teams that, well, I think we all expected Denver to be a playoff contender. And maybe after this week, depending on what we see out of Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts, you might have to put the Colts into that conversation. Personally here, look, minus 1.5 for me in my mind, that's just go to the money line. And I like Indy here. I'm a big fan of home dogs. I think Indy has been kind of steady Eddie through this entire process. Everyone probably laughed when Daniel Jones was named the starter and kind of wrote them off, myself included. And it seemed like within a half of football, we all took a step back and went, oh, okay. And don't forget Daniel Jones, what was it, 2021, 2020? No, I think it was 2021, had a fantastic year. And was an all-pro or borderline all-pro, definitely made the Pro Bowl. But I think Shane Steichen, the talent that is around Daniel Jones, it's not a crazy New York market. I think this is really going to work wonders for Daniel Jones. Give me Indy plus 105. What a 360 I've done in 2 weeks, and we'll figure out if that was warranted or not after this one. But I like Indy plus 105. I think this is going to be a really good game, and I think the spread obviously agrees with me on that, minus 1.5 for Denver. In terms of the over-under, though, I'm going to go with the over here. 42.5. I know we have two really good defenses. But I also do think both of these teams realize, I mean, look, we might look down the line, week 14, 15, 16, 17, and this game could have major ramifications for both of these teams' playoff performances. So while it's not a divisional game, I think both of these teams have to realize, hey, if we win this game, we might already get a leg up on that wild card side of things. And I know Indy might not be thinking wild card, they might be thinking division, and Denver as well. But this could be a game down the stretch that we look back on and go, oh, yeah, that was a week 2 matchup that had big effects. So I do think we're going to see both offenses, I don't want to say fully open up the playbook, but they're going to be going deep into the playbook, I believe. So give me the over 42.5. That's also just a really low number. 2 good defenses, I get it, but I think the offenses are pretty good too, despite what we saw out of Denver week 1. Moving on to game number 3, and probably the game of the week, definitely in my household, but maybe across the league. It's the one that jumps out because it's the one that ended the 2024-25 season. As I remind everyone, and I touch my hat for our podcast listeners, my hat is a Super Bowl champion for the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, this is the Super Bowl rematch. Eagles, 1-point favorites in this one. The over-under does sit at 47. On the money line side of things, minus 120 for Philadelphia, plus 100. Pretty much even money for Kansas City. Not pretty much even money. It is even money at the moment, or at least when I put this together. This is a tough one. I don't like, I very rarely, I will never bet on my own team just because if my team loses, I don't want to lose twice. I'd rather have my heart lose a little bit rather than my heart and my wallet lose a little bit. So this could be an emotional hedge situation for me. And if you're not familiar with that is, that's just essentially me saying, hey, the Eagles should win this game. But if they don't, let me put a little bit of money on the other team on their plus number. And you know what? If I lose, at least I go get to buy some Chipotle or something, you know? So that's how I'm kind of looking at this. I really do think Philadelphia is a better team, but Arrowhead is a tough place to play. This is going to be a team that probably had this game circled since the schedule came out. They will have a lot to prove after the ass whooping that they took at the hands of the Eagles. And make no mistake about it, it was an ass whooping. So I think the Chiefs come out, and I think this is a big opportunity for them to get some revenge. I kind of think of it very similar to where the Eagles were last year, or 2 years ago, when they came off of the Chiefs beating them in the Super Bowl and the Eagles went to Kansas City and got the win. I think the Eagles, that was a big, big game for them, a lot bigger for them than it was Kansas City. We might see the reverse here. So even money, Kansas City, I think, is the best way to go. Philadelphia, over under of 47. This is a tough one because I could see it going both ways. I could see this being a defensive battle. I could also see Mahomes and Hurts really getting after it, especially Mahomes. He has a lot to prove, or at least in my mind, I think he's got a lot to prove against this defense. I'm going to go with the under, though, because I still think even in the back of both of these teams' minds, they both expect to meet up in the Super Bowl. I think that's just kind of the way both these teams are looking at it. I'm going to go with the under. I think playbooks are maybe scaled back a little bit. You don't want to put too much on film, especially in front of these, especially a guy like Steve Spagnuolo. You don't want to go too crazy and give him a little inkling into what you're thinking. So give me the under 47, but I am not very confident about that. That is a very tough over-under line of 47. So staying in the NFC East, it is a intra-division matchup. And again, the Washington Commanders are playing in about 15 minutes on Thursday Night Football. So not talking about them this week. We'll get back to them next week. But the Giants heading to Dallas to face the Cowboys. Cowboys are going to be 6-point favorites in this one. The over-under sits at 44. On the money line side of things, the money line side of things, the Giants are plus 230 and Dallas is minus 280. I really thought the Giants were going to be had a little more in the tank heading against Washington. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, they were not even able to cover the spread. Really a bad performance from Russell Wilson. Unsure when we're going to see Jackson Dart, but I have to imagine the clock is ticking. I like Dallas here. I was impressed with what Dallas put together. I thought Dak Prescott may have put, yeah, I don't watch a whole lot of 60-minute Cowboy games, very rarely. And unfortunately, when I do, well, not unfortunately, but when I do, it's generally playoff games, and we all kind of know how that goes. So sometimes it's a little difficult. You look in the box score, Dak did this, and you go, oh, all right, pretty, average game. And if you do look at the box score of Dak Prescott, probably doesn't jump off the page, but the eye test, I thought he was absolutely incredible. But at the end of the day, it wasn't enough. We did even have what seems to be our yearly opening night weather delay that pushed the game, delayed the game for about an hour. And I think it really just kind of put a wet towel on a game that was so much fun. I mean, I think it was 21-20 at half. And so I think the over-under was something like 46 and a half. And we had 41 in the first half, and we still stayed under. That just kind of shows you, again, everything kind of slowed down after that. The weather delay. And at the end of the day, the Eagles defense was able to kind of pull themselves together, get the job done. In this one, however, Dallas, I think, is going to take care of business. This will be their home opener. I think there is going to be a lot of emotion on the field. And I think Cowboy fans, while they're still upset about losing Micah Parsons, I think if you ask all of them, I think they would all say they were impressed with what they saw out of this team on Thursday. And I think they continue that here. Now, this is probably a little bit of a trap game. Everyone is on Dallas here. Keep that in mind. But again, I'm not going to go against what I saw week one. Dallas, really good. The Giants, not so much. So give me Dallas -6. You know what? Give me a half a point. Let's just cover ourselves. -5.5. And then the over-under, I'm going to go under until the Giants prove to me that they can get 2 touchdowns on the board. It's going to be very difficult. And I do think the Giants defense is pretty darn good. Abdul Carter and company, I think, are going to be just fine early. I worry about them in late game situations, just because they're probably going to be on the field a lot more than they should because of how bad the Giants offense is. So Dallas -5.5, gonna have to buy half a point there. And the over-under, give me the under 44. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, the Atlanta Falcons. This was supposed to be the Kirk Cousins revenge game, even though he's the last person that would ever want revenge. One of the nicest and just kind of homey guys that you'll be out there. We'll obviously be seeing Kirk Cousins. It is Michael Penix. And you know what? I think Michael Penix could very well be a very, very good quarterback. A tough loss at home against Tampa this past week. That was a tough one for them. They fought back, but in the end, not enough. In this one, though, the Vikings the Falcons are heading on the road to face the Vikings. Vikings are going to be 4.5-point favorites, and the over-under sits at 44.5. The over-under of +180 for the Falcons and -220 for the Vikings. In this one, I was very, very impressed with what I saw out of both JJ McCarthy and Kevin O'Connell. With that being said, 4.5 points, that's a lot. I am going to take Minnesota here, 4.5, but I think, if this game is going to actually make it onto my real card, it's probably going to be in a money line parlay with maybe Dallas and Pittsburgh or something to get close to even money. 4.5 points. I don't know. I could see this being a field goal game, just like we saw this past Sunday out of Atlanta. But Sunday Night Football, give me Minnesota -4.5, and I'll take the over 44.5. I want to see a little bit more out of Atlanta's defense before I start believing that they're good enough to keep some games under. And I really do think Minnesota, the Vikings, learned something from week one. I don't think they're going to be able to start nearly as slow as they did against the Bears, against other teams. And I think Kevin O'Connell understands that. Give me the over 44.5. Moving on to our final game that we're going to be diving deep into. Normally talk about 8 games. We can call it a little bit of an audible here. It is very hot in my room right now. I'm not going to lie. I'm starting to sweat. I don't want to say profusely, but I'm sweating in my own room. So that's something I do not like to do. Fan is blaring, but I need to go out and touch some grass here momentarily. So final game we're going to be breaking down. It is the Monday Night Football opener, if you will. It is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Houston. Houston's going to be 2.5-point favorites in this one as the home team. The over-under sits at 42.5. Tampa Bay plus 125 on the money line, minus 145 for Houston. This is a game that scares me because it seems very obvious to me. But why is Houston favored here? I get it. It's a home game. I understand that. But I believe Tampa Bay is a better team than Houston. It's been, now 18 games that we're kind of waiting on CJ Stroud to return to rookie form. And I think there are some people that are not asking the question, but certainly formulating that question about CJ Stroud. I'm not ready to give up on him yet. However, I'm going to trust Tampa and Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, those guys to get the job done, even going on the road. And this would be a huge win for Tampa. If they can start 2-0, 2 road games just like that, I like Tampa plus 125 on the money line. I think they win this game outright. In terms of the over-under, 42.5 is the tough one because I think you do have 2 pretty good defenses. You only have one offense that I really think has shown me they have the ability to maybe put up 28 points, and that's Tampa. 28-14 still doesn't get us there. I'm going to take the under here. I think Tampa Bay gets the job done on Sunday night. I don't think Houston has a huge home field advantage. So give me Tampa on the money line, underdogs on the road, Monday Night Football, and then I will take the under 42.5 until Houston can prove to me that they are able to get their offense back on track. So moving on to the other games to mention, again, running solo here today, so called a little audible, only talking about 6 total. But some of the others that are going to be on the slate, Seattle plus 135. They're heading to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers. Steelers are going to be 3-point favorites. Over under is 40, minus 160 for Pittsburgh on the money line there. Jacksonville plus 160 on the money line. They're heading to Cincinnati to face the 1-0 Bengals. Congrats to the Joe Burrow and the Bengals getting their first win of the season in week 1. Cincinnati 3.5-point favorites, minus 185 on the money line, and 49 is the over under. Buffalo 6.5-point favorites as they head to New Jersey to face the Jets. The Bills are going to be 6.5-point favorites, minus 310 on the money line, and 46.5 will be your over under. The Giants plus 225 on the money line. On an NFC North matchup, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. Chicago heading to Detroit, the Bears plus 215 on the money line. Heavy dogs. The Lions going to be 6-point favorites. 47.5 is your over under, minus 260 on the money line side of things. Cleveland heading to I did not write down the team that they're heading to. Give me one moment. I wrote down the name, Cleveland Browns. They are going to be playing the Baltimore Ravens. I should have known that. Anyways, the Baltimore Ravens will be 12-point favorites at home against the Cleveland Browns. Browns are going to be plus 575 on the money line. Ravens minus 900 on the money line. The over-under there is 45. That's a lot of points, folks. That's a lot of points. That's all I'm going to say there. The Los Angeles Rams, they are 5.5-point favorites as they head to Tennessee. The Rams are going to be minus 250 on the money line. 41.5 is your over-under. Tennessee plus 210. New England heading down south to face Miami. Wow, Miami is going to be 1-point favorites in this one. Minus 120 on the money line for Miami. New England plus 100 on their money line side of things. The over under there is 43. San Francisco. Now I don't want to pull up the numbers right now because I'll get too distracted and I don't want dead air. But San Francisco is heading to New Orleans. It was announced today Brock Purdy will be out for at least 2 to 5 weeks, apparently. So when I put this together, the Niners were 4.5-point favorites. Minus 230 on the money line. The over-under is 42.5. I have to imagine those numbers have moved. I don't think New Orleans is going to be a betting favorite, but it may get under 3. So just keep an eye on that. Again, I don't want to type in Bovada and all that stuff and get that number up and just have 15 seconds of dead air. Doing my best to keep things rolling as is. So San Francisco at New Orleans, check the line on that one. Again, Brock Purdy out. And then the final game, Carolina at Arizona. Carolina is going to be plus 250 on the money line. Arizona minus 6.5 on the point spread, minus 300 on the money line, and 44 will be your over under. It's a hot one out here, folks. Apologies for, maybe cutting it a little shorter than normal, but I'm getting a little dehydrated over here, even though I'm through bottle number 4, but it's a hot one here in San Diego. No central AC. Excuse me. Old house. Old apartment, I should say. The stucco is doing a lot of work right now, but it is time for our final thoughts, or my final thought. And obviously alluded to it at the start of the show. It is September 11th. It is a moment to reflect and remember what happened 24 years ago and the loss. And obviously the loss of human, the loss of a lot of things. But I think for me, the one thing that will always jump out, me being 13 years old, it was the loss of innocence. And trust me, if September 11th didn't happen, I would have lost my innocence anyway. But that was, I think we all, a lot of us lost our innocence that day. And yesterday, unfortunately, maybe another inflection point in this country. Unfortunately, I'm sure you all know Charlie Kirk, the political commentator, the guy who just goes out and sets up a tent, puts a microphone and says, hey, let's talk. And you know what? You may not like him. You may not agree with him. Whatever. That's fine. That's what America is all about. And to be honest, I think Charlie Kirk would have loved to have talked to you if you disagreed with him, because that's what he loved to do. He loved to debate. He loved to talk. Unfortunately, in Utah yesterday, his life was cut short. It's difficult to put into words because sometimes the default is, all right, it's time to start a dialogue. And it's hard to say, okay, it's time to start a dialogue when somebody who was going around the country trying to start a dialogue was assassinated. So all I can do is pray for our country, pray for the world. But mainly, most importantly, praying for Erica Kirk and their 2 beautiful children, a 3-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son. It's videos are out there. Y'all have seen it. I'm not breaking any news. It's heartbreaking. I do want to say one thing, and I hope everyone is still here. This isn't some like crazy sacrifice or anything like that. Everyone sees our follower account or subscriber account. We're not we're not the biggest thing out there. We're a pretty small channel. I get that. But if you cheered, if you believe that it is okay to use political violence to silence your political opponents because you don't like what they believe or what they say, if you think that's a good thing, firstly, I think you need to get help. You need to find something to ground yourself and find some type of humanity. But before you get help, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to unsubscribe and I need you to never watch this channel again. Because I don't want those type of people in this community. Sports are very divisive. Everyone's got an opinion. Raider Jim had some thoughts about a fullback yesterday, and we got plenty of comments coming out about that. And you know what? That's fine. It's all good. I didn't respond to him just because, you know what? It's been a long week, and this was well before this stuff started. I didn't really want to dive into it. Didn't want to dive into the negativity, but you know what? That type of discourse in sports is fine. But again, if you truly, truly do believe that it is okay to kill your political opponents or your enemies because you don't like what they say or what they believe, get help. But before you do that, make sure you never, ever come back to this channel again. So with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are First. Thank you all so much for listening and hanging out with me today as we get you ready for week 2. It is time for you all to go wash your hands, and more so than ever, please, 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 let's stop hating. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful week. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.